Hey there, it's Renessa Boley Layne, and I want to welcome you to another conversation on creating your perfect work. We are in the middle of our Love and Work Summit, so if you have missed any part of this interview series, please go back and catch up because whether you are married, single, coupled up, dating, craving love, running as far away from love as you possibly can, there is something in this series for you. And so today's conversation is for you if you are dissatisfied in some area of your work or life. It could be as simple as, wanting to elevate to the next level of your career, your business, or it could be, wanting to create an even yummier love life than you already have, kind of that whole good to great kind of thing. But it's also for you if you are struggling in some area of your work or life. Like if you are stinking it out in the dating game, if your marriage is simply not where you want it to be and you can't figure out why, this conversation is going to lay a foundation upon which you can build every other shift and strategy that we talk about in this series. And this remarkable man who is sharing the screen with me is none other than PJ. PJ is an international speaker and resiliency expert, teaching people to embrace and live the resilient way. And you're going to find out why as you get to know him. But he's delivered more than 4,000 presentations in his lifetime and is considered one of the world's leading authorities on resilience and overcoming obstacles. Now, here's the kicker. Despite his disability, which was expected to take his life at 7, he chose to live and live well. He is a former wheelchair athlete, international traveler, founder of 2 nonprofit organizations and 4 disabled sports programs. He's a published author. He's a watercolorist. He's an acrylics painter. He's a 10th degree black belt. He's a martial arts and women's self-defense instructor, and he's a meditation teacher. I say all that because it takes away every excuse you could possibly have. So I wanted to read all of his bio. So PJ was inducted into the National Hall of Fame for people with disabilities and nominated to carry the Olympic torch through Tucson, Arizona in 2002. And so needless to say, he has overcome some things. And for some of you listening in, creating a love and work that enchants you will require some overcoming as well. So you are definitely in the right place for the right conversation. And so those are all his accolades, right? But what I personally admire about PJ is that he is literally salt of the earth, like salt of the earth. He is good people. His example will inspire you. It will challenge you in a good way. And I predict that you are going to learn so much from our conversation together. And so with that, I just want to welcome PJ to the show and thank you for being a part of our conversation.
This is a real honor to be in your presence. You are one of the most classy women I know. And for you to be leading this summit and have all of these women following you and looking up to you and wanting to be like you, I love that because they couldn't look to a better mentor.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
We are going to have a good time together, y'all.
Let's do it.
We're
Let's
going to
get
have a good
crazy.
time together, and you are going to be so blessed and so inspired and so challenged and so enlightened. And I'm starting high with expectation. It's because I know what I'm talking about here. So, PJ, you speak a lot about this idea of commitment, or more accurately, you talk about recommitting. And on the surface, I think that can go over people's heads like, oh, I've heard that before, right? But when it comes to women leveraging their marriage, their dating, their intimate relationships to get highly paid doing work they love, why is commitment so fundamentally important?
Well, because resilience by itself is born from commitment. So
Yeah.
just that alone, resilience is born from commitment, explains so much because when people come up against difficulties or obstacles, what do they often do? They quit, they turn away, they try something different. Oh, that's too hard. I don't know how, right? They give up.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
the resilience that gets you where you want to be. So if you want that healthy balance between the love and the work, you want to find that resilience within you to be able to do both at your best possible level. And the only way
Yeah.
you can do that is by beginning to let go of the things that aren't serving you and actually commit fully. I shouldn't have to say commit fully, but I do because
Mhm.
so many people only partially commit and then
Mhm.
they partially commit to something else. And as you know, I say all the time, you can't serve 2 masters. You got to be focused on one or the other. In that moment, you can shift when you go to the other area of your life.
Got it. What does partially committing look like? Because I believe that most, at least most women listening in on this show, when they make a decision, except maybe on the weight loss, like I might not be fully committed to Jen Craig, or maybe not fully committed to my Twinkies, but I think especially when it comes to love, and especially when it comes to showing up in the marketplace in big ways, we think we're committed. And if someone were to ask us, we'd be like, yeah, of course I'm committed. Now I might not be getting the results I want, or whatever. So how do you distinguish between being fully committed to something and being partially committed?
If you're not getting the results you want, you're not fully committed. Ouch.
Interesting.
That's hard to say. Ouch, right? If
Interesting.
you're not where you want to be, if you're not completely where you want to be, you're not fully committed. Why? Because you probably haven't tried everything. So many times I hear people say, oh, I've tried everything. Have you? Because I
Yeah.
guarantee you've tried everything that you're willing to try. And have you
Mm,
actually fully committed to that? Right? Or have you only tried the things that maybe, in your defense, maybe you've only tried the things that you could think of? So have you
mm,
actually tried everything? And the chances are no. Why? Because we could go out right out on the street anywhere and say, hey, this is my situation, my problem. Do you have any ideas? Like, what would you do? How would you handle it? How would you advise somebody else to handle it? And I guarantee, like, you're going to get at least one or two ideas that you hadn't thought of before. They're not all going to be good, right?
yeah.
But the fact is that if we're not where we want to be in our life, it's because we've quit somewhere, we've taken a delay, we've procrastinated, we put it off. And when you're fully committed, resilience is born. And so you keep moving forward.
Hmm.
Resilience gives you the ability to keep moving despite the adversity. And
Hmm.
unfortunately, so many times when we experience that resistance, that fear, that worry that I'm not where I want to be, that confusion, we stop and we step back instead of saying, hey, how can I help? Let me give you a perfect example. When I first started running my own business, I've been speaking since I was 7 years old, but I was being offered to be on John Lee Dumas's podcast. John Lee Dumas is one of the biggest podcasts in
Yeah.
the world. On
Hmm.
fire, right? He's a personal friend of mine, but I was way too, uh, for lack of a better word, I was way too young or too green in my
Yeah.
entrepreneurial field to
Yep.
actually go on the show. So
Hmm.
when this just, oh, I have chills on my spine. This is the worst feeling. The day that my interview went live, I didn't have a website up.
Hmm.
And he reached out and he was like, what are you
Very
doing?
well.
Where's your website? Where is this? Like people are calling me and saying, hey, I can't find, PJ's site. It made him look bad, made me look bad. And the reason that I say that this is the perfect example is because I didn't want to quit, right? So I was being resilient and trying to figure out how to build a landing site all by myself. I didn't really know how. I was trying to figure it out. I couldn't figure it out. I didn't know like the language I should put up
Yeah.
there. I didn't have videos completed or they weren't uploaded yet. Like there were all these little, like I just needed 24 hours and it would have been okay. But why didn't I ask for help? Because I
Yeah.
did everything that I thought I could, but
Hmm.
I wasn't where I wanted to be. I very simply could have picked up the phone, called a friend of mine here in Tucson who's brilliant at business, understood it much better than I could. He could have helped me have it done in like 2.5 hours. But I didn't.
Right.
I didn't ask for help because I thought that I had to do it myself. The problem is
Hmm.
we think we have to do it ourselves. We're committed, but we're
Yeah.
only committed to one direction, right? And we're not fully committed to the wholeness of how can I get this done? In my life, because I'm
Hmm.
physically disabled, I have to ask for help all the time.
Hmm.
And so to be fully committed, for me to get from point A to point B, for me to get what I want in my life, I have to often ask for help. And I didn't do it in that time. And
Yeah.
I'll bet the people that are listening sometimes get on that track where they like, I have to do it myself. Really? Or could you set it down and step back and go, okay, how else could I do this? Because the
Yeah.
moment we put something down and step back, take a breath, and then we look around, we go, okay, maybe there's some other alternatives. When we're so close to it, we don't
Hmm.
realize what our options are, and we get singly focused. We think that that's resilience. We think that that's commitment, and it is. The intention is commitment. The spirit is commitment, but the application is not commitment. The
Hmm.
application of commitment is stepping back and opening up the doors for new alternatives.
Yeah. I'm still stuck on you've done everything you're willing to do. I'm still stuck on that point
Yeah.
because I
Yeah.
think at least, hopefully for other folks listening in, I'm stuck on the point if you haven't gotten your result, then you're not committed. I was like, okay, that's the swallow that
It
one.
hurts. It hurts, right? And I
But
don't mean to be offensive, but I
yeah,
want you
yeah,
to
no,
have
no, no.
that shock.
Yeah. that's absolutely appropriate. But I do think that for a lot of us, there is this sense of you have to acknowledge that you have done what you are willing to do.
Yeah.
And oftentimes, especially in the realm of love and relationship and marriage and dating, there are so many things that you are challenged to do that you don't want to do, whether it's forgiveness or whether it's humility or whether it's letting something go or whether it is being prioritizing
Apologizing.
unity
Yes.
above being right. Like all of these different things are things that you must decide, are you willing to do that? And there have been times in my relationship where, not many times, but there's been a couple of key things, and I will literally say I am not willing to do that. And I remember I had a mentor who asked me, she's like, okay, in your marriage, and she asked it very casually, she's like, well, what are you willing to do to have the kind of marriage that you say you want? Of course I'm willing to do whatever it takes. And she's like, are you really willing to do whatever it takes? And I was like, of course. And she's like, are you really, like, if the other person doesn't meet you halfway, are you willing to go 100%, and the other person not move one iota, are you willing to carry that relationship on your back? And I was like, well, I don't know if I'm willing to do all that, and so, and there's nothing wrong with that, but it's about you being willing to be honest, and again, how we do anything is how we do everything to some degree. I don't think that's always the case, but I think there's patterns sometimes. But I hear, I speak, have lots of conversations with women who are trying to figure out, where do I belong in the marketplace, my career, my business, how do I get highly paid doing work I love? And 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 often, not oftentimes, sometimes I'll have these conversations and I know all the pain points. Person is crying on the call, they are miserable, I'm losing weight, I'm depressed, right? Here's my problem. And you come to the solution. Here's what needs to happen. I have mapped this out for you. I have figured it out. This is your thing. This is the solution. This is what we're going to get you from A to Z. And they're so excited about the solution until they figure out the price. And then it's like, well, I don't know, blah, blah, blah. And it's completely fine, because for many folks, when they come into these programs, it's a bigger investment for them than since college, or whatever. So I understand that. But I also expect that that's where the rubber's going to meet the road, because now you can't say, you cannot unhear, you cannot unsee. Now what it's going to take for you to get from here to here. And it's fine for you to say no to that, but you can't come back and say you can't figure it out. You can't come back and say, because you can't. But walking through this door is a door that you're not willing to do. And as long as you know that, then we're good. But there goes all the excuses, right? But the same thing happens in love. You got to be willing to do what you may be unwilling to do. I think it's powerful.
I think there's a couple of things in what you're saying, if we can just like unpack it a little bit.
Yeah.
You have to be aware, right?
Yeah.
Awareness is the beginning of all transformation.
Absolutely.
All transformation begins with awareness, right? And all transformation, all awareness begins within, right? Well, not all, but all transformation begins within. Okay, so you have to be aware of, just like you're saying, what am I really committed to? What am I not committed to? The truth is, when you start to say no to something, you start to say yes and start to reveal whether you want to or not, whether you even knew about it or not.
Yeah.
You get to reveal what you're actually committed to. Now, listen, a lot of times this starts to cross over from like a conscious level, like I'm consciously willing to do these things in my relationship or for the success of my business. But as I start feeling more and more and more is taken from me, as I feel like I'm losing more, I start to shift over into my unconscious primal part of my brain, which is designed for the fight or flight or freeze or whatever you want to define it. And so we start to shift over, and that commitment for survival kicks in. So that's where we have to sometimes stop and go, hold on, let me just stop right here. Let me step back and become aware of what's going on. I see that I'm shifting into primal peace. Is this really what I want? I know that's what my brain wants because it's trying to get me out of the pain, but is that what I really want? right?
Yeah.
And so when you are able to look at that and distinguish between this is what's happening, but this is
Yep.
what I want, then you're able to make a conscious choice. You don't have freedom until you realize that you have options. Okay.
Yeah.
And so if you're in reaction mode, reaction is a slave action.
I
You have
like
no
that.
choice. It just happens. Right. And then you are left, the conscious you, is left to clean that stuff up later, which is usually messy and yucky.
Yeah.
So you're able to
Yeah.
stop yourself and go, hold on, where are we going? Is this what
Yeah.
I want? Another thing that you said that I think is really important is you said a lot of times people aren't willing to pay the price. I don't
Yeah.
want people to hear that in two different ways. Right. I get it. You were talking about like, coming in to invest in a mentor or a coach and be able to train with somebody who's going to get you where you want to go. That's sometimes scary for people. But also pay the price means you have to do the time with the resilience, right?
Yeah.
If you struggled in a relationship and it needs some work, you have to be able to pay the price, put in the time, say the apologies, walk through it, talk through it, work through it, have those conversations, look to
Yeah.
collaborate. All of
Yeah.
this is paying the price. If you
Hmm.
don't do that, you're going to pay the price.
Yeah.
It's usually a price that you don't want. And I'm not just talking about divorces and breakups and things like
Yeah.
that. It's just
Yep.
emotion, right? If I'm in reaction mode, I have to pay the price of reacting. I don't like it. I have to apologize for it later. I have to figure out later.
Yep.
We're going to pay a price either way. The difference is one is for a premium result. The one is not for a premium result. It's your
Yep.
choice.
Yeah. It's interesting that you say that because as I was preparing our conversation and thinking about this whole idea of commitment and what does it mean, I thought, oftentimes we our commitment this is my perspective. I'm not the expert, he's the expert. So I'm just like this is me talking. Sometimes I think that at least for women, our commitment can be way too big.
Yeah.
Like and not too big into because I'm all about dream big. Like I'm big on vision. But sometimes I think the commitment that we make is too big for the moment. And kind of here's what I mean by that. Your commitment might be to this. We'll talk about love because it's Love Work Summit, but your commitment could be to this big, this juicy, amazing, awesome marriage or dating relationship or whatever. Oh, I want to be this, that, and you've got this whole vision around what you're committed to. And yet something happens in that relationship. The person says something triggers you, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, yeah, I'm committed to this big, juicy relationship, but I'm about to cuss you out right now because you have hit on my last nerve about this issue, right? Well, to your point, in that reaction mode, I'm not, I've created this whole, much bigger mess. And so perhaps if I know where I am in my evolution, being committed to the big, juicy relationship might be too big of a commitment. Perhaps I get committed to guarding my mouth, or I get committed to only saying that which will build up and not tear down, or I get committed to being deliberate about the input that I put into our dynamic. Why? Because that's where we are in our relationship. And if I focus on that commitment, then in the moment, when a moment of conflict happens, I get to make the choice of, do I say something now? Do I not say something now? All of that. So this is going to be in line with the commitment, or it's not in line, but at least there's a direct link to an outcome. Whereas sometimes we are committed to the outcome without being committed to what it takes to get the outcome, right? Whether it's health and I'm committed to, being this fit, fine, fabulous, whatever, but I need to be committed to 64 ounces a day. And so for some of us, especially because we're so conditioned to go big or go home, that the commitment is so big, and then we get hard on ourselves for not being able to hit it, but it might be too big for the moment for where we are in our evolution. And I see it with women on the career and workspace. Oh, I'm gonna make X, Y. I'm gonna this year I'm making my first $500,000, but you can't charge X. Like we got to work on just charging more, and then we can get to $500,000. And so that whole idea of commitment is about being very intentional and deliberate about what that looks like. So
It's about what are you willing to go through? What are you willing to face? What are you willing to overcome? And I agree 100%. It's in the present moment. I was coming out of the hospital yesterday, and I heard a lady saying, she said, honey, you just need to get rid of that guy. She said, that's what I do. I just,
mhm.
as soon as I face any kind of, what'd she say? How'd she say it? She said, anytime they give me any kind of trouble, I just give them the boot and get a new one. I was like,
Oh,
there's about zero resilience there, and there's a ton of blame, right?
mhm,
It's all about his fault. He's giving me problems, so I'm gonna kick him to the curb, and then I'm gonna go get a new man,
yeah,
right? Well, why would you go get a new man? Why wouldn't you stop for a second and go, what's wrong with what we have here? It's
mhm,
fine if it's not working, right? It's okay if you don't feel like you can commit to that big future that's way out there, because we're in the present moment right now. The present moment is the only moment that really matters. So in
mhm,
this moment, how do you want to show up? Right. So you were running through all the different things that you can be thinking about. And one of the things that we can think about is, okay, in this moment, what is the value that I want to show up with?
mhm,
What are my values? If I know what my value is, then how do I want to enact that? To me, authenticity is the noun, integrity
mhm,
is the verb. Authenticity is what's true inside of me, and integrity is how am I going to live that truth? And in this moment, if I'm in reaction, I'm committed to self-preservation. And I might stop for a minute and go, hold on, back up and look at that and go, what's my real value? My real value is kindness. My real value is love. My real value is being gentle. My real value is being honest, but not hurtful. Okay, how do I want to adjust this? My way I'm communicating, how do I want to adjust and step back in so that I feel like I'm operating from my highest possible level in that moment? What am I truly committed to? Right? Again, what am I truly committed to? Not what is my unconscious mind committed to? A lot of times you'll hear me say, when I'm referencing the unconscious mind, I refer to it as it. And often
mhm,
I'll say, we just get that, the mind just won't stop chattering and won't like stop ruminating on the struggle or the suffering and the difficulty that we're having in our personal life. So it comes into our workplace and we just can't seem to be 100% committed to work because I haven't resolved this stuff in my head. And so when that rumination happens, we just want to say, shh, it, because that's all the unconscious mind is doing, is giving you it, right?
mhm,
Forgive the language, ladies, but that's sometimes what it does. So this is why when you hear me say, I want this, I step back and I go, hold on, this is me. This is my truth. My
mhm,
truth is, this is what I value. This is how I want to show up in the world. This is who I want to be. This is how I want to communicate. What I was doing over here, I do not like this. This doesn't feel good to me. I know it's not feeling good to you. How do I fix that? Step back,
mhm,
take a breath, identify who I am, who I truly am, step back in with that integrity. Again, the verb, how am I going to show up in my truth in this moment?
mhm. How do we kind of process who we are? Because you talk about how you show up.
Yes.
And I think for many people, how they show up, how we show up, I'll speak in the we, how we show up can be contingent on how somebody else shows up,
Yep.
right?
Yes.
And and that becomes an scapegoat, for not showing up at the highest, not being committed to the vision or the version of yourself that you say you're going to be in the world. But I think it's a slight distinction, and it's difficult though,
Yeah.
because sometimes folks can feel taken advantage of, or if I'm going to love despite the situation, or I'm going to love even though you didn't apologize, and all of these other kinds of things which happen in relationship. At the end of the day, though, we cannot be at the mercy of someone else's ego trip, or we
Right.
cannot be at the mercy of someone else's journey, because different people are at different stages of their own growth at different times. So what advice do you have for women for identifying who they are going to be objectively,
Yes.
in the world, and then being true and committed to that version of the woman in spite of what might come their way externally?
I think that's a really great question. There are really two stages to this. Number one is it start your day with your own values. Start your day in the heart, in the intentionality, in the sensation, the feeling that you want to move through your day with. and think about it not just in terms of how it feels inside of you, but how it feels when it comes out of you. Like, how do
Mhm.
you want to interact with people? And when you start that way, there's an immediate commitment in the morning that says, this is who I am. I'm going to let go of whatever my brain created overnight and put, a particular thought in my head. And I woke up with a particular emotion. I'm going to let that go because I am committed to this. This is who I really am. This is how I really want to show up. And this is the way I'm going to move forward throughout my day. And then the second piece of that is making sure, oh my gosh, I just tripped over my own thought. Give me a sec. Second piece is making sure that showing up first, or committing to yourself in the morning, your own values, and then can you ask your question again? It'll cue my brain.
It
Super
is
sorry.
how do you kind of identify who you want to be and then be committed to showing up that way, independent of what other people bring
Right,
to
right.
the dynamic.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Um, and so the second piece is once I show up, or once I am who I want to be, we get to recognize that I can either be a free person or a slave.
Mm,
Only two
talk
kinds
about
of people
that.
in the world. There's only two kinds of people in the world. There are free people and there are slaves, right? The moment that somebody else's life impacts you and you react to it, a reaction is a slave action. So this
Mm,
is why you start your day in who you are, right? What you really believe, how you want to show up in the world. When you move through your day in this particular way, and then outside forces start to hit on you, you're already primed to catch it early. Awareness is critical. So you don't want to wait until later. You don't want to wait until it's build up, build up, build up, and then you want to react to it, right?
mhm,
You want to respond to it as early as you can. So whether it's traffic and somebody's cutting you off, and you said, I want to be patient, I want to be kind, I want to be loving, I want to be
mhm,
supportive. So you just back off and give them space. You might have
mhm,
felt the anger rise up in you, but then as soon as you're aware, because all transformation begins with awareness, as
yeah.
soon as you're aware, you can simply ask yourself two questions. I do this all the time, all the time. Like I'll wake up in the middle of the night and I'll have these two thoughts. One, do I like how I'm feeling right now? And two, if I don't, and you never ask that question when you're having a good time, right? The answer is always no.
I
Yeah,
feel like crap.
yeah, yeah. You never say, like, if you're laughing and joking and playing and, just in love and everything is wonderful, you never say, do I like how I'm feeling? You say, thank you for letting me feel this. It's a
Mhm,
much different thing. So the first question is, do I like how I'm feeling right now? The question is, are the answers no? The second question is always, what would I rather feel instead? What would I rather feel instead right here in this moment? So
mhm,
the moment that feeling starts to rise in you and you go, hold on, I can be a free person and make a conscious choice about how I want to feel so I can respond to this situation in a way that's going to make me feel good. Or I can react and feel crappy and have to go and fix it later. Right.
yep,
And again, reaction is a slave action. So just these two questions. Okay. Do I like how I'm feeling right now? Nope. What would I rather feel instead? Patient, kind, generous, loving, inquisitive. Okay,
yep,
hold on, honey. I understand that you're upset. Can you help me understand? Because I don't understand where you're coming from. Right.
yeah.
And so that desire where you shift from, oh, well, you're not listening to me, to hold on, maybe I don't understand where you're coming from. Let me put my thoughts and my ideas and my needs on the back burner for just a moment. And let me come to you and say, help me understand more about where you're coming from.
Mhm,
When I do that, all of a sudden the other person feels like they can get it out. When they get it out, now they're open and receptive to our perspective. Okay.
mhm,
We can't come at each other in the same way. When we're dancing, one person has to lead, one person has to follow. If we're both talking at the same time, nobody's listening. If nobody's talking and we're both just trying to listen, it's awkward
mhm,
too, right? But you can be silent and present because there's a flow that goes back and forth. There's a
mhm,
balance there. But if you're feeling like there's an imbalance inside of you, how would
mhm.
you rather feel instead? And it's just a quick shift. You don't want to wait. Um, David Goggins uses the phrase "win the war in the morning," right?
Okay.
And David Goggins uses that phrase to talk about doing all the hard stuff in the morning. Get up and do all the things that it's going to require tons of willpower. So as your willpower depletes throughout the day, you've got, smaller and smaller and smaller things to do. So you're able to accomplish a lot more. I like to borrow that phrase, win the war in the morning, and say, anytime that you start to feel something that comes up, remember, again, all transformation begins with awareness. Anytime you become aware of you're not where you want to be, something doesn't feel good, you don't like
Mhm,
the current situation, win the war in the morning, address it in that moment. Don't wait till lunchtime, dinner, or a midnight snack, because by the time the midnight snack comes, it's a full-blown army that's going to
It's
overwhelm you.
festered. Yeah.
And it's going to ruminate, and it's just going to make you sick. Then you're going to throw up on somebody else. But if you're able to handle it early, you can just redirect the energy and we can adjust it straight away. But not
Yeah.
everybody's willing to do that. This is resilience, right? Most people are, oh, I'm scared, I'm a little worried, so I'm going to run away because I don't like confrontation. Does it have to be confrontation? Or can it be collaboration, right? Help me understand where you're coming from. Gosh, you just said that, but I'm not sure I understand what you mean by that. Help me understand, right? Collaboration, confrontation. I don't like when you talk to me like that. Now it makes it a little uncomfortable for everybody. There's not a problem in drawing boundaries, but could we have done something before we needed the boundaries? And it comes back to, again, starting your day. How do you start your day? Who do you want to be? What are you actually committed to?
Yeah, I think that's powerful, especially the slave and free analogy. It reminds me of a woman that I know, amazing, amazing woman, and she's very loving. Like she's like her love language, at least the one that she gives, is she gives gifts. And so she's always giving gifts, always giving gifts. She's very just big-hearted and all of that. And so when she has these moments in relationship where she feels taken advantage of or, unloved or whatever, the first thing she'll be like, well, I'm just not gonna, I'm gonna stop giving, and I'm just gonna guard my this. Like she just goes into this very armored, protected space. And I don't need a man, and this goes, it spirals down. So, and it's all born in hurt, and it's understandable. But her level of giving and her level of community building, it's her superpower. And so the first thing that gets held hostage is her superpower. So she decides, I am withholding this from every other man that walks the earth. You will never get that piece of me. And it wanes down. This will last for a couple months and then she'll open back up again. Why? Because it is really it's just who she is at the core. Like most people are nice people. She is like, this is her superpower, is making people feel amazing. She's thoughtful and considerate and all of that. Not a wallflower or anything, but she's just really like, wow, you remember that? She's that woman. And so, and we'll often have these conversations like, you can't wall off your stuff, like that's your superpower. And if you choose to shut down that woman, then guess what? The man that you're ultimately waiting for, you will not attract, because the thing that is most attractive about you, you have locked away in a tower and thrown away the key. And so that there goes that slave thing, but we do that. We're like, well, I'm not, I'm stonewalling, I'm not speaking, I'm not giving ideas, I'm not like, we shut down and we'll be polite or we'll be whatever. And we do it in the workplace. Well, I'm no longer doing this for coworkers and blah, 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 and all of this. And we think we're hurting people. And we are to a degree because we're depriving the world of, our gift. But we really are hurting ourselves because that is naturally and authentically when we are happiest. And everybody's got their thing as to, man, when I'm in this space, it is where I shine. I'm happy, I'm authentic, I'm healthy. And then you shut that and you suppress it down. And the person who is most affected by it is you.
Yes.
And so it goes back to that slave idea of, am I committed to being the absolute best version of a woman that I have decided to be?
Yes. Yes.
And that woman can attract all kinds of abundance, may not come from this man, may not come from this, I might not be reciprocated, directly. I might give to you, you might not give to me, but that it'll come from someplace else. And so the saddest thing is when folks shut down the very best part of them because we're more committed to protecting and guarding our heart or feeling right or feeling justified than we are to being the queen and standing in that space in all of its juicy, yummy, whatever, because that's how you live life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Love it.
One of the things too that you're saying is that what you're really referencing is how people go from 0 to 100. And they miss the micro steps in there, right? So anger is a secondary emotion. Many people don't know that. Many people know that, but they don't necessarily know what that means. So when I say anger is a secondary emotion, what this means is that there are all kinds of other emotions that arise prior to the anger. Now you could be like, I go from 0 to anger instantly. You
Best.
do, yeah, right. Because there are all these little micro movements inside of your psychology that occur. Why are you angry? I'm hurt, I'm embarrassed, I'm disappointed, I'm scared, I'm confused, I'm whatever the multitude of emotions are that happen prior to that. If you're aware of those starting to rise in you, then all of a sudden you can shift quicker and you can say, hold on, I know that my normal routine is to go from 0 to angry, but let me back up and let me try something different. I'm starting to, whatever the biological reactions are in your body. Are you tensing your jaw? Are your hands getting sweaty? Is your heart starting to beat? Do you feel cold? Do you feel flushed? Do you feel hot? Is your mind thinking about like fighting? Whatever is happening, these are indicators ahead of time that you can go, okay, hold on. And again, this comes back to awareness, right? Hold on. I know that I'm starting to go down a route where I'm going to be upset. So let me adjust sooner. What am I feeling right now? I'm feeling irritated and confused. What comes a little bit before irritated? Because irritated is pretty close to anger, right? Well, I'm irritated because I feel like this person isn't listening to me. Oh, okay. So what is it that you need? Well, I want them to listen to me, right? So your brain will go through these if you train yourself to be aware. If you just go, okay, well, what's going on? Why am I feeling this? What is it that I need in this moment? And then um, you can control the expression that comes out of you. But when we lose that control, then all of a sudden we're in that reaction mode. We've gone from free person to slave, right? And we can shift right back to free person instantly, as long as we get control back. But when we go from 0 to 100, we lose that critical part of ourselves that you're talking about, the part that we really feel good in. And we want to stay in that as much as we possibly can. The other thing is when you're in that state, and the state of being in that superpower, in that place where you feel really good, then you can use that to identify the level of standards that are acceptable and the level of standards that are not acceptable within a relationship, whether it's a business relationship or whether it's a personal romantic relationship. You're able to catch those sooner. And so you don't have to find yourself involved in a relationship that has this terrible breakup. You're able to address the situation and transition into a healthy relationship because of the dialogue and conversation that you've had, or transition out of a new relationship sooner. Why? Awareness. Because you're willing to talk about it, because you're showing up in your authenticity and you're operating from that integrity. You're coming from that real truth. And that feels good. Mother Teresa said one time, somebody said, Mother Teresa, how much should I give? And she said, give until it hurts. I adamantly disagree. I love Mother Teresa, but I 100% disagree. Do not give until it hurts. And ladies are notorious for this. You give and you give and you give and you do and you do and you do. And stupid dumb boys just take advantage of it. They take advantage and they don't appreciate it and they don't contribute back. And you just keep giving and giving and giving. And that resentment level goes up. So I say, on the other, contrary to Mother Teresa, she said, give one until it hurts. I say, give until it feels good, until it feels really good. And then stop giving, because the moment you give past it feels really good, then all of a sudden it feels like it doesn't feel good anymore.
Interesting. That's an interesting way of looking at that.
Yeah. And what happens then within relationships is you can give until it feels really good. And then you're able to say, well, you know what, that doesn't work for me. So I'm going to say no tonight. Thank you for the invitation. Or, yeah, that just doesn't feel right for me, because what
I
you're
like
doing
that.
is you're focusing on what feels good to you. And then as soon as that starts to the boat starts to rock a little, you're able to go, this doesn't feel quite right. We're not stable. Let's address this inside myself or collectively.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah,
The last question I have for you, I really like that. Give until it feels good. That's a great tipping point. It's a great measure because we all know kind of where that plateau happens.
yeah.
And you're like,
Can I
oh,
do one quick story? Is that okay? And I don't know how relevant it is, but it just keeps coming up during our conversation right now.
Okay.
It feels like it needs to be said. Somebody out there maybe needs to hear this.
Okay.
So I have a delightful, delicious, wonderful, amazing lady friend here. And she had been in a 7-year relationship with this gentleman. And she was fully committed, but he could only show up partially.
Mhm.
And so finally they've separated, but they're in the same industry. So, they've got friends that work at the same place. And so she's constantly hearing about him. And she texted me last night and she said, okay, I want to love him as a friend. Um, and so I want to have this conversation with him about how we can do this. And I said, you know what, I think that's fantastic, wonderful, and great. You should absolutely do that. And I said, but you don't need to have that conversation to love him as a friend. And she goes, no, 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 I do, because within a relationship, there are certain things that, like, he has to show up and I have to show up there. We both have to show up in a particular way. I said, then you're not loving him as a friend. You want to love him as a relationship, because I have several friends that sadly just never show up. And so I've just sort of let my hands go of them and let that relationship float away. But I still love them as a friend,
Mhm.
but I'm not in a relationship with them because
Mhm.
it's just not working. I said, if you want a relationship with them, that's a different kind of thing. You do need to have that conversation about how you're both going to show up and commit to that. But if you just want to love him as a friend, then love him as a friend and don't expect anything back. If you're in a relationship and there's expectations, then you have to have that conversation. There's a
Mhm.
difference between loving and letting be, right?
Mhm.
And loving with expectation. There's
Mhm.
nothing wrong with having expectations. That's acceptable. If you
Mhm.
don't, you're going to have people take advantage of you.
Got it.
So I don't know why that I hope
Somebody
it's
needed to
value
hear
for
that.
somebody. I hope so.
Somebody needs, and I think part of it is being true to what you want.
Yes.
As especially as high achieving folks, we can make anything sound good. Like we can finesse any kind of narrative and it sounds logical and it sounds all kinds of ways, and yet we're not being honest about our true intention and what we actually want, either because there's judgment around what we want, or this or that or the other. And so as we talk about this whole concept of commitment, it's being committed to what you want, committed to who you're going to be, committed to what it takes to, to do that. It's all just different levels of being committed to your truth. Whether people agree with your truth or not, there's always going to be judgment around what you think is best for you. Everybody's got an opinion. Everybody's got opinion on your life in one way, shape, or form, but you are being invited to be committed to your truth. Do I want to work through this relationship? Do I want to fight for that relationship? Do I want to go from 0 to 100% for this relationship, for that individual? And do I want to carry it on my back? Do I not? Right? You get to be committed to that truth. And there's a tremendous amount of courage that it takes to do that.
Yeah.
So all of the things that PJ's talking about in terms of resilience and all of that, at the core of it all is the courage to say, this is what I want.
Yes.
And so as we're thinking about the broader Love and Work Summit, there's all of these different strategies and tools and mindsets and healing of childhood traumas and all those kinds of conversations that we've been having. And at the end of the day, it's the courage to be committed to whatever it takes for your healing, for finding your voice, for women at asking for what you want in the bedroom, doing whatever, all the different conversations that are happening. There's a courage that's required in order to be committed. So if it feels scary, if it feels overwhelming, if it feels makes you feel vulnerable and insecure, like, guess what? Welcome to the big leagues. Like, that's just what it takes. And so the purpose of this conversation was to really lay that foundation, kind of the resilience foundation, because the strategies are simple. They're not easy to execute. It's the stuff that we're talking about in this conversation that groom us into the women that we need to be in order to step through one sometimes unsexy step at a time to really be able to get what we want in our love, in our work, and all the other places in between. So
And
that,
and
is
when
there
you're
anything that
committed,
you want to throw to that?
I'm sorry, yeah, I'm sorry. When you're committed, it doesn't necessarily make it easy. Okay. But when you're committed, you have the resilience to get through it anyway.
Yeah,
Okay. But if you're
yeah.
not committed, you won't have the resilience, and that'll key you in to know, I guess I'm not really fully committed yet because I can't seem to muster the energy, the drive to get past this piece that's frustrating me.
Yeah. I want to add something to it, because again, the point that you made early on about if you're not getting the result, you're not committed. And I want to make a caveat to that, because that for some listening might mean that, oh wow, if this relationship is not working, then I'm not committed. So I need to just, stick in, stick in, stick in. Well, hopefully you get the tools to figure out, is this the right relationship for you or is it not? The commitment is, I want whatever your vision is for a relationship. I want an amazing, loving, mutually supportive, fun, whatever your value happens to be for your relationship. The commitment is to that vision. Now, the person that you are in relationship with may or may not be the one to fulfill that vision. And so when we're committed to the vision, then it's a lot easier to determine, is this the right person to do the journey to get to this outcome? It doesn't have to be dude. It doesn't have to be this person. And I'm not saying people should leave or stay or anything like that. I'm simply saying that sometimes in our minds, we think that, well, this is the partner I started with. This is the person I'm dating. We've been, seeing one another for 12 years and we're still engaged or whatever. And then we hold on to that, not realizing that holding on to that is actually, there's not a commitment to the vision, because this over here is not going to get to the vision. So what are you really committed to? And if I'm committed to the vision, that may mean that I make really difficult decisions because I'm more committed to the vision than I am to the safety or the certainty or the comfort of the person that I may have been with forever. Same holds true in your jobs. Same holds true with careers. When women are trying to make big pivots, there's this idea of, oh my gosh, I've spent 15, 20 years going down this career path and I've invested and blah, blah, blah. And how can I make a shift and give this all up? It's about what vision are you committed to for your life? And so I'm going to leave it at that, because that's a whole nother interview.
Really,
But,
really, really
but
is.
that being said, I want to, PJ has a free gift that he is offering to the membership, and I'll have him share what that is in a moment. But I'm a firm believer. Oh my gosh, his stuff is good. His stuff is good. You got to stay connected to him. And so no matter what the free gift is, it's an opportunity to enter into his ecosystem. It's an opportunity to get emails and content and, opportunities and all that to connect with his work. And so make sure that whatever it is that you click the link, name and email address, and make sure you get connected. And so with that, please share what you have for our folks, and then we'll wrap it up.
Great. Thank you so much. So I wrote a book called a digital book, an ebook. I
Mhm.
wrote an ebook. It's 117 pages. It's called 5 Ways to Date Yourself and One Big Reason Why You Should. 5 ways to date yourself and one big reason why you should. Because I really believe that women should date themselves so they really understand who they are, what they love, what they like, their passions, the things that they don't like. And it helps them to be able to create the standards for when they let somebody into their life romantically.
Mhm.
That's really important. And I'm sure there's a link somewhere that they can get it. What'll happen is you'll put in, just like she said, you'll put in your name, your email, and then it'll open up a Google Drive for you to download it. It's going to pop up and say, "Hey, are you sure you want to do this? This is too big for Google to scan." It's literally just a PDF. So if you're not comfortable with that, I understand. You can find me online and I can email it to you. But it just functions better this way if it's on the Google Drive account, because some emails don't accept the size of the particular file.
Mhm.
But if that concerns you, just shoot me an email and we'll fix it.
You'll be fine. You'll be
Yeah.
fine. Get the book. So probably didn't make the connection. PJ has a whole prior life in relationships. And
I do.
so if we're talking about resilience and commitment and all that kind of stuff, and you might have missed the memo. This guy does a lot in the relationship space. And so this ebook is great because as we're talking about who you're committed to as a woman and how you want to show up in the marketplace, again, even if you're married, we need to date ourselves. We need to figure out, what do we enjoy? Who are we separate from our spouse, our amazing spouses, separate from our kids, separate from, all of that? Who are we? Separate from the job, all of that kind of stuff. And sometimes you can lose sight. Countless women lose sight of that. It's like number one, I don't know who I am, my identity, blah, blah, blah. So this becomes an opportunity to really fall back in love with who you are and really like who you are and enjoy who you are. And then you have a standard for how I'm going to show up, as being loving and kind or joyful or content or funny or whatever it is that you want to be. So with that, yes, there's a link directly below this video, and then you know what to do from there. But it has been such a pleasure. Thank you for sharing your wisdom, your insights, your generosity with our audience. And so on behalf of PJ and myself, we want to wish you every happiness and every success, and we will see you all the next time. Take care. Bye-bye.